Craig, how are you, mate? Craig Stobo
I'm well,
joins us
thank you.
now. Isn't there a promo
Yes.
that we give for Craig, Josh? Should we do that now? We're just going to give you your promo, Craig.
High
Okay, good
Performance
call.
Thinking with Craig Stobo. Brought to you by Platinum High Performance Homes, Auckland.
There you go. High performance thinking, Craig. Actually, just as I'm talking to you now, this is just broken, but I thought you'd be interested, even though it's nothing to do with New Zealand. The US are reviewing AUKUS. You know, the deal with the submarines between Australia, the UK, and the US. So they're saying, oh,
Yes.
there's not enough in it for us. So, oh, that's going to upset the apple cart, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's part of the UK's defence budget revisions includes the commitment to submarines. It's a huge cost for Australia as well.
Mm.
But I guess the US is exercising leverage as Trump appears to be doing across all facets of their global alliances. But it puts a lot of pressure back on the US and Australia, I suspect. So, um, what does that mean for the defence programs in both countries and the way that alliance works together? It sort of speaks to also to our involvement with the second part of that, which is New Zealand potentially being able to access technology, which I think is a great idea. Access technology, but do we really need a submarine? No, we don't. We've already got our defence budget and reforms rolled out by Judith Collins. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago as part of the budget, which includes surface, marine surface drone technology, air drone technology, etc., etc., etc. So I'm very pleased we're not part of AUKUS 1, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, that's right. Listen, I had a very interesting interview on yesterday about methane from one of the government panel, Professor, gosh, what was his name? Professor Blake. Yesterday, was it yesterday? Yes, it was yesterday, wasn't it? Who was saying exactly what you were saying about methane and how he's a climate change professor from Canterbury University, and he was making the point in our interview today exactly. It must be nice to have people actually backing you up, Craig.
Well, I'm sure there are other people who are thinking as I think, which is to look at the science first
Yeah.
and then say, how on earth do you go from the science to these political conclusions? And that's when you wrap up two different gases into a CO2 equivalent number, which is what the Climate Change Commission is forced to use through UN IPCC. But it's not logical because it's a short lived gas, has different characteristics, and because of the unique nature of ourselves in Ireland, agricultural producing nations, we should be fighting in our corner to get that rectified so that CO2 equivalent is unbundled effectively. Uh, and you then think around the politics of that, and maybe you get the conclusion that for other nations who don't have methane GHG profile like Ireland and New Zealand, maybe they don't want that to happen because that increased component of CO2 in the GHGs makes it much harder for them to adjust because they have hardly any methane. So you think, oh, how do we ever get to this in 2015 when we signed this Paris Accord stuff? So, I'm really pleased to hear that someone else from academia who's a specialist in climate and methane emissions profiles and the short-lived nature and differentiated nature of that gas is talking. It's fantastic. Like, can we just talk the science, please? It just makes so much more sense. Once you've got that, you can
Go and
back
have a
me our
look at
corner.
the interview, Craig. It's on the platform, I think, and it's on YouTube. Professor Dave
Right.
Frame, F
Well,
R
great,
A M E,
fantastic. Well, ups to
Canterbury
him and his.
University. He's the chair of climate change. He was the chair of climate change of Victoria. Now he's gone to Canterbury. But he was
Yeah.
also fascinating, Craig, because he was saying that he was actually originally on the IPCC when they wrote that particular chapter. Um, and he said that the illustration that they used was never meant to be picked up. In fact, they said, do not pick up this illustration of how you can get there and make it policy. And he was stunned when he came back home to see that they had made it policy and that they'd put it into the Zero Carbon Act of 2019. And he was
Yeah.
he was
Well,
going,
yeah.
whoa,
Okay. We're unique in the sense that we've legislated for 1.5, other
yeah, that's
countries
right.
haven't. And a lot of the work of the IPC is modelling and pathways as guidance. That it's not like science. So it's
Correct.
not like law or science. So we can pick up whatever we want from that.
That was
I
exactly the
think.
point he made. Mm.
Okay, well, we need our diplomats to back really hard in this next round of the UN IPC to take methane out of CO2 equivalents and have it as a standalone component, because we suffer because of that unnecessarily, because the science isn't supporting what the UN IPC's rolled out.
And it's not, he made also the point yesterday, there are two other countries in the same boat as us who are heading in exactly the same academic direction, and that's Ireland and Argentina. And he said the real problem,
Would it be okay? Argentina. Okay, all right, cool.
yep, those are the two he mentioned yesterday. And he said that the real battle they're having is with the European community in North America, who are wedded to this concept. And so he believes that there'll be more countries that join the three, including New Zealand, in combating the scientific assumptions that are underpinning the trade assumptions. Oh, and the other thing he said, and you'd be interested in, was that, gosh, I've forgotten now what I was going to say. Sorry, Dave. It's gone. It was really important, Craig.
Well,
You know, it's one of those. I've forgotten.
I'll pick up the threads from that. When I was with the NZ initiative in Ireland, I met with ministers as part of that study tour, and I asked the question, why doesn't, because you've got a similar profile to New Zealand with methane and agricultural exports is an important part of our economy and revenue streams, why don't you just walk away from Paris?
Yeah.
He said, well, we kind of can't do that. If we don't meet our targets, we're going to be taxed. And I mean, when you tax agriculture, in history, you'll know this, it leads to riots.
Yep.
Right? When you tax food and bread,
Yep.
you can just go back over history and say this is just not going to work. So,
Yep.
if your climate scientist from Canterbury is saying that Ireland and a South American nation, Argentina, whatever, is with us, fantastic. We need friends to push back on the politics, not the science, the politics, and
That's
resurrect the science to say methane is a different gas. It's short-lived. It's potent, but it's short-lived, and we should adjust our settings accordingly. It's great to hear.
Oh, now that was the other thing. I've suddenly remembered what I was going to tell you. He also says we've legislated for 1.50 increase in centigrade, 1.5 centigrade, trying to get it under that. Made a whole series of assumptions. He said we've already passed it. I mean, forget it. It's gone. So we're trying to reach a target that's already disappeared.
Yes. Well, I think. Yeah. Well. Okay. Well, he's in a good position to know that. So you sort of say, what are we fighting for? It's I don't understand. The politics are tragic when you think about it. So, federated farmers got a strong campaign. People are becoming more aware of the actual underlying science, and we need to stand up and fight for our country. So I said last week, it's great that Prime Minister Luxon is now taking a stand on this. I think he's probably at field days this week. I don't know, but it'll be a topic for discussion. And
Yep.
he should support the sector that's driving a lot of productivity and revenue for our country that's been subject to the politics of science, not the science.
Yep. Absolutely spot on. Listen, I wanted to share something else with you, if I may, please. GDP, gross domestic product. The figures I think are due to be released. Is it next week, Craig? Have I got that right for the quarter?
You may do. I don't have that date to hand. I'm sorry.
I think it is next week, and there is a suggestion in economic circles, which I'm sure you've come across, that in actual fact they may have underestimated the New Zealand economy. It's actually starting to grow, and they expect that to be confirmed next month. Do you get that same feeling as well?
Well, we think you can never pick the trough in the cycle, but we do know it's somewhere, December quarter to June quarter this year, because there are important growth signs coming from our export sector, clearly, and that's across a range of products and services. So it shouldn't be surprising. And in addition, you've had drops in the cost of funding, so that will eventually feed through into people's household budgets. Maybe not straight away, but eventually. So the forecasts from the officials, Reserve Bank or Treasury, are for a recovery later in this year and into next year. In fact, the RBNZ easing profile sees a bottoming coming towards the end of this year as well, in sync with that improvement in growth. So yes, it wouldn't surprise me to see a better number coming out, but that's for the March quarter, bear in mind. So we're well into the end of the June quarter. So we'll see how that travels.
Okay. The government's also made a great deal, I mean, its way of getting out of our funk at the moment, if you like, in terms of economic and our fiscal funk, is to double exports. And I see, as of this week also, double tourism numbers as well by 2035. Those are aspirational goals. I mean, they would seem huge to me. Your thoughts on whether or not they really can be achieved?
Well, we had similar kind of aspirational targets pre-lockdowns with previous ministers, and it's aspirational in one way, but you just have to think through the consequences of that and the load on our tourism infrastructure. Um, we have these debates at the Tourism Policy School all the time, Michael, around the quality of tourists coming in
Yeah,
and volume,
yeah,
and areas like your area in Central Otago. There are local concerns and community acceptance of increased tourism impact in their communities, the impact on infrastructure such as water, such as roads, access to amenities. And so just have to be careful about what that means. And the sector that's hit the hardest, arguably, is local government, and they just don't have the tools to cope with volume changes, to upgrade infrastructure to cope with that. You recall the Queenstown Mayor tried early on 2020, 21 from memory to bring in a bed tax to try
yeah.
and improve local revenue from tourism. At that time, Minister Nash, the tourism minister, was receptive, but it didn't get through cabinet and into law, which just means we go to rates. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that this
Well,
morning
can you
because,
explain
as a
this to
segue,
me? Why? What's wrong with the bed tax? I've never understood the problem.
uh,